Guitar can be a tough instrument, and it can be really overwhelming for most players out there, especially when it comes to things like chords, knowing how to play the right chord for the situation. Because of the way the guitar is laid out, we have plenty of different options with note choices and chord choices and how to voice them. So how do we know what's right? How do we know if we're playing the right chord? In today's video, I'm going to show you 3 different ways to finding the right chord voicings and helping you understand what's actually going on the fretboard. Now, before we get into it, we have a video course that we just launched that takes this subject and goes deeper called the Caged course. You can get a discount via the link in the description box down below, but more on that later. So let's grab a guitar, get tuned up, and take a look at the first approach. So step 1 is to simplify. And the best way to do that is to not play the entire chord. Very rarely on guitar should we be playing the entire chord voicing. Now I'm saying this in the context of playing in a band or in an ensemble, especially with electric guitar. If you're a lead guitar player or a rhythm guitar player, you don't usually want to play the entire chord voicing. Let me show you what I mean. So let's just take our standard G major shape, right? Pretty nice standard chord voicing. That's a triad. It's a chord made up of 3 notes, the root, 3rd, and 5th from our G major scale. Now this voicing gives me root, 3rd, 5th, root, 5th, root, right? That's a G major triad we all know and love. But I never play this chord this way because of this interval right here. The G and the B creating the major 3rd gives me a really dark, muddy sound. Listen to it. It just doesn't really ever fit. So instead, what I always do is get rid of that 3rd altogether. And I just mute the 5th string with my 2nd finger here. And now I have this. Now technically, that's no longer a triad, it's a power chord. I'm just playing the root and the 5th of G major, but still, it gets the point across. That sounds like G major. And because that lower 3rd is not in there muddying everything up, the guitar sounds clearer and more punchy. That's just one example. Another example is if we take a G major bar chord. Now again, this is one of the shapes that people always say that you need to learn, and you do need to learn your bar chords, but I never, ever, ever play a major bar chord like this. Instead, I voice it like this. I'm simplifying the chord down to its most basic components, the core parts of the triad that get the tonality and the color of the chord across without getting muddy or dark or stepping on other instruments. That, in most musical contexts, is going to sound better than that. We can even take it a step further than that with some higher voicings. For example, we play this G major out of the caged shape here. That's my C shape of the cage system. Again, I don't ever play it like this. I don't ever put my pinky on the root note of the chord because I don't need that note. I don't need that G on the 5th string telling me that this is G major. Instead, I play it like this. Now that's called an inversion because my 3rd is the lowest note of the chord. If you want to know more about that, I did a whole video on inversions, which you can check out here. But this is, to me, a much better choice than that in most cases. Now you can do this with all different types of chords and voicings all over the neck, but the point is to try and simplify. Get rid of the stuff that you don't need and only play the most basic form of the chord as a jumping off point. And what you'll find is the guitar generally sits better and fits better in the mix, especially when you're playing with maybe another guitar player or a keyboard, for example. Now, the next thing to do in regards to playing the right chords is to think about style or color. I like to think about chords and altering chords in terms of color. It's like blending 2 different colors or adding highlights or adding shadows. That's what we can do by altering chords. So let's take C major, for example, just your standard C major triad down here in the open position. In this position, there's a few things I can do here to change how this chord feels, how it sounds, or the color of the chord. For example, I can take this major 3rd here, the E, and I can get rid of it and drop it down to D the open D string, and now I have a C sus2 voicing. That has a different feel, a different sound compared to, I can go the other way, I can go to sus4. Or I can move between them. Or getting back to the idea of inversions, one of my favorite ways to play C in this position is to actually play an inversion by adding the G, 3rd fret of the 6th string below it. I get this really lush, low, warm kind of voicing. This is called a second inversion here, and I love playing voicings like this, both C major or D major. Sort of dark and mysterious, and I love it. But let's look at a couple of other examples. That C major triad right there, this is the A shape from the Cage system. And there's a few things I can do here. I can play another inversion like this. That's a first inversion, C major. Or I could add the top 2 strings up here and play basically a power chord. But if you listen to it, it sounds more airy or sparkly than this. That has a different color to me. That's brighter. It's got more sparkle to it than just your standard triad. There's nothing wrong with that, but if I'm trying to get a brighter sound, I might choose to go here. Or this D shape up here. I can modify this. I can make this a sus2. Here's another sus2 voicing. So here's my standard C major triad, but I can do this by making it a sus2 and then adding the major 7th there. I get this really beautiful, colorful, kind of complex chord. And again, going back to our first point, this shape comes from my C major bar chord. So I'm simplifying down to the most basic parts of the triad, and then I'm just moving some notes around to get different colors. Now, before we jump on to the next point, I want to quickly plug the Caged course. This is a full video course dedicated to the Cage system, which I think is a really great jumping off point when it comes to understanding your triads and your chords on the fretboard, not just to play chord progressions or songs, but to use them for soloing. Now, if you've been interested in the Cage system or you've learned bits and pieces of it, this course is going to teach you everything that you need to know about Caged and how to use it as a jumping off point to get into deeper subjects and deeper ideas when it comes to understanding the fretboard. So to get a special discount, which is only available through this video, check out the link in the description box down below, and I hope you enjoy it. And lastly, movement. Now, being able to play your chords in all different places on the neck is really important because it means that you have a firm grasp of the neck and the fretboard and how things work, but you also want to be able to move between them fluidly. So to practice this, we're going to take a simple chord progression. We're going to be in the key of G major, and we're going to play C major, the 4 chord, G major, the 1 chord, E minor, the 6 chord, D major, the 5 chord. So we have a 4, 1, 6, 5 in G major. Now you probably already know how to play this in the simple Cowboy chord voicings down here, right? Sounds fine, but let's say you're playing with a guitar player who might already be playing those voicings. What are you gonna do? Well, you might try moving up to Now those are simple triads, but I can simplify them even more by not playing the root. Then we can also move up and down the neck. So I can take that idea of playing simple triads and do it up and down the different positions here and start to move between the positions to make a more interesting sound. So or Or I can simplify it even more by just playing the root and the third in what's called a 10th voicing right here. So for example, there is a root and a major third for C major, but they're spread by an octave, so we call that a 10th. If you were to count up the major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's where we're getting the term 10th. And because it's the root and the third, we're also getting the quality of the chord, major or minor. So I can play C major, G major, E minor, or up here on the 12th fret, just E minor, D major. It's a really great sound. It's simple, but it's conveying the idea of the chord. Or we can take it a step further and play things like sixth voicings. So the sixth interval. So for C major here, going, and then I can combine all of those ideas to play the simple chord progression in more interesting and creative ways. So those are 3 different approaches to finding the right chord. Now this is totally subjective. There is no right or wrong in music. These are just ways to make different choices. If it sounds good to you, then it is the right choice. It is the right chord. Maybe you want something that is dark and moody and muddy, or maybe you want something that's bright and airy. These 3 methods are just ways of making those choices a little bit easier. How do you find the right chord for you? If you enjoyed today's video, let me know by leaving a like and a comment down below. Also, don't forget you can get a discount on the Caged course. If you enjoyed the subjects in today's video, that course is going to take you a little bit deeper. Click the link in the description to find out more about that and my other video courses. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. It really helps the channel out. My name is Rhett Shull, and I will catch you on the next one.